Have you ever heard of a child whose faith was so pure, so unwavering, that the infant Jesus himself came to her aid, not just once, but throughout her entire life? Imagine a young girl, filled with a deep love for God, praying with the simplicity of a child, and witnessing miracles that would leave the most devout among us speechless. Today, we'll step into the extraordinary life of Saint Rose of Lima, a saint whose mystical encounters with the child Jesus are nothing short of awe-inspiring. From the tender age of 5, she experienced moments of divine grace that would shape her life and reveal a profound truth. With faith in God, all things are possible. Picture this: a little girl longing to learn how to read and write, but with no one to teach her. Instead of despairing, she turns to the infant Jesus with a prayer so sincere, so filled with trust, that he responds in the most miraculous way. And that was only the beginning. As we journey through her story, you'll witness how this humble girl from Peru grew into a saint who not only performed miracles, but also became the very embodiment of Christ's love for the sick, the poor, and the forgotten. Her life was a living testament to the transformative power of faith and humility, and her mystical encounters with the child Jesus will leave you inspired and in awe. So, stay with us as we explore the life of Saint Rose of Lima and uncover the lessons she learned from the infant Jesus, lessons that continue to resonate through the centuries and challenge us to deepen our own faith. Saint Rose of Lima's story begins with a heart ablaze for God, even from the earliest days of her childhood. Picture a little girl, barely old enough to speak, yet already drawn to holy images, statues, and crucifixes with a love that seemed to surpass her age. Her parents often marveled at her devotion, watching as she spent her days in prayer and fascination with the mysteries of God. By the time she was 5, Rose's desire to know and serve God had already taken root. She wanted to learn how to read and write, not for ordinary purposes, but so she could better understand the lives of the saints and the teachings of the Church. But in her household, no one had the time or patience to teach her. Her mother tried, but quickly grew weary and gave up. Most children might have resigned themselves to frustration, but not Rose. With the simplicity and innocence of a child, she turned to the one she trusted most, the infant Jesus. Kneeling before her favorite statue of the Holy Child, she prayed a heartfelt prayer. "O Jesus, help me to know and love you, and teach me to read and write." What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Not long after, Rose approached her mother with astonishing news. She could now read and write. Naturally, her mother was skeptical. How could this be? Rose, with calm confidence, explained that the child Jesus himself had taught her. To prove it, she picked up a book about Saint Catherine of Siena, one of her greatest inspirations, and began to read fluently. Imagine the wonder and awe in that moment. For Rose, it was not just a miracle. It was a confirmation that her faith in God's power was well placed. This extraordinary grace wasn't just a one-time event, but the start of a life filled with divine encounters and lessons directly from heaven. Rose's childhood miracle is a reminder to all of us of the boundless possibilities that come with childlike faith. The child Jesus met her in her need, not because of her status or achievements, but because of the purity of her trust. It's a powerful lesson. When we rely on God with the simplicity of a child, miracles are not only possible, they are inevitable. As Saint Rose of Lima grew older, her faith deepened, and her love for Christ became an unshakable force in her life. But Rose's devotion didn't remain locked in the quiet chambers of her heart. It poured out into the world in acts of extraordinary charity and compassion. In her small Peruvian village, Rose became a beacon of hope for the sick and the suffering. She understood the words of Christ in a profound way. "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." This understanding became the foundation of her life's mission. Imagine a room in her family home, modest and simple, transformed into a haven of mercy. Rose lovingly called it the infirmary. Here, she would care for the poor, the diseased, and the forgotten, those whom society had cast aside. No illness was too grave, no condition too repellent for her tender care. Her heart was so united with the Sacred Heart of Jesus that she saw him in every face, no matter how disfigured by sickness or suffering. But Rose's charity wasn't limited to physical care. Her faith brought miracles into this humble infirmary. Word began to spread through the village that those who came into contact with her small statue of the child Jesus, which she affectionately named the Little Doctor, experienced incredible healings. Picture this: a sick child, pale and weak, carried into Rose's infirmary. The family, desperate and afraid, places their hope in the prayers of this holy woman. Rose, with gentle hands, places the little doctor near the child and prays with unwavering faith. Time and again, people would leave the infirmary restored, claiming their healing came after the statue's touch. These miracles were not only signs of God's power, but also of Rose's deep connection to him. Yet, despite the growing recognition of her sanctity, she remained profoundly humble. She never claimed the glory for herself, but always directed it back to God. "It is not I who heal," she would say, "but the child Jesus working through me." Rose's life in adulthood is a powerful witness to the truth that faith without works is dead. Her charity was not simply human kindness. It was a reflection of her divine calling. She gave herself entirely to serving others, knowing that in every act of love, she was serving her beloved Jesus. Through her hands, the sick were healed, and through her heart, countless souls were drawn closer to God. Rose's unwavering compassion reminds us that holiness is not about grand gestures, but about small, daily acts of love performed with extraordinary faith. As St. Rose of Lima's life drew closer to its heavenly culmination, her union with Christ became even more profound. It was as if the veil between heaven and earth had thinned, allowing her to experience a love so divine, so overwhelming, that it could only come from God himself. One of the most extraordinary moments of her life occurred on a Palm Sunday, a day already rich with spiritual significance. Rose, a humble member of the Third Order of St. Dominic, stood quietly among her fellow tertiaries in the church of Santo Domingo. The sacristan was distributing palm branches to the congregation, a sign of Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem, but somehow Rose was overlooked. In her humility, Rose didn't complain. Instead, she bowed her head in silent prayer, offering her disappointment to God and seeking his forgiveness for her eagerness to receive the palm. It was in this moment of deep humility that heaven opened to her in a way she could never have imagined. As she approached the miraculous statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary with the child Jesus, something incredible happened. The statue became animated, and the Virgin smiled tenderly at Rose, a gesture so filled with divine love that it moved her to tears. But the grace didn't end there. The Blessed Virgin turned to the infant Jesus, as if asking him for a special favor on behalf of this humble soul. Then, with a voice so sweet and gentle, the divine infant spoke directly to Rose. "Rose of my heart, be my spouse." Can you imagine the flood of emotions that must have washed over her in that moment? Joy, awe, humility, and an overwhelming sense of unworthiness all mingled in her heart. Rose, trembling with holy fear and love, bowed her head and wept tears of gratitude. She understood the magnitude of this grace, that the King of Heaven had chosen her, a simple and unworthy servant, to be his bride. From that day forward, Rose lived with an even greater intensity of love for Jesus. Her mystical betrothal wasn't just a private moment of divine intimacy. It was a call to an even deeper union with his will. She offered every suffering, every sacrifice, and every act of love as a gift to her divine spouse. This heavenly encounter reminds us of the beauty of humility and the power of surrendering our will to God. Rose didn't seek greatness. She sought to love and serve in quiet faithfulness. And was precisely in her humility that God lifted her up to experience the heights of divine love. Her mystical betrothal invites us to reflect on our own relationship with Christ. How often do we, like Rose, surrender our disappointments, our desires, and our entire selves to His will? In doing so, we open ourselves to the possibility of encountering Him in ways that transcend our imagination. St. Rose of Lima's life is a powerful reminder of incredible things God can do when we trust Him completely. From her miraculous encounters with the infant Jesus to her tireless love for the sick and poor, Rose's story inspires us to deepen our faith, practice humility, and live for God with all our hearts. Her mystical betrothal reminds us that Christ desires an intimate relationship with each of us, one filled with love, trust, and surrender. So as we reflect on her life, let us ask ourselves, how can we grow closer to Jesus in our own daily lives? If you enjoyed learning about St. Rose of Lima and her miraculous encounters with the infant Jesus, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of faith. Be sure to check out our other videos and share this one with friends and family who could use a little inspiration today. Thank you for joining us, and see you in our next video.